All right, welcome back to another episode of the podcast.
Hello.
How's everyone doing?
Pretty good.
Nice.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. I slept for the first time in a very long time last night. It was very great. I just haven't been sleeping well for the past couple of weeks.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah, but no. No. I had a cold and I couldn't sleep.
Oh.
It was different.
Well, guess who has a cold now?
You?
Yes.
Oh, I hope it's not as bad as mine was. I'm talking fevers every day.
Oh, no. If I take a deep breath right now, this whole lung hurts right now.
You should get that checked.
Yeah.
I feel like that should have been told before I came here.
It honestly got much worse tonight than it was this morning when I left the house.
Oh, no. Okay. All right. Oh, no. Okay. All right, Asha, what you got?
Hey guys,
Hey.
we're gonna be doing some true or false questions.
Okay.
Can be a competition if you want it to be.
Okay. Who's going to keep score?
Farah,
Okay.
ready?
Yep. Wait, what is our buzzer? I'm going to say my name, I guess, like how we did last time. Kevin's
Yeah,
going to say something. All right.
A lion's roar can be heard up to 8 kilometers away.
Fried chicken. That is false. That's my
Oh,
buzzer
that
sound,
really
by the
threw
way.
me off. Okay,
Are you going to keep it consistent
Yes.
the whole time?
you said
Okay.
false.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's true.
It's true that
is
it's
true?
false?
No, it's true.
No, the answer is
your
true. I
answer
was
is
going to
wrong.
say,
Next question. An octopus has 3 hearts.
Ariel, true.
Correct. Fish cannot blink.
Ariel, true.
Correct. Goldfish have a 2-second memory.
Ariel,
Fried chicken.
true.
Okay. Yeah, I think Ariel was first. Hippos sweat a red substance.
Fried chicken. False.
Wrong.
I knew it.
The first animal sent into space was a monkey.
Ariel, true.
Wrong.
What was it?
Wasn't it a dog?
No, it's a fruit flies.
Fruit flies? They count as an animal? Okay.
Cinderella was the first Disney princess.
Ariel, false. Snow White.
Correct. Walt Disney holds the record for most Oscars.
Fried chicken. False.
Wrong.
Interesting.
There are 2 parts of the body that can't heal themselves.
Fried chicken.
Ari-
True.
That is false.
The one time I change it up. The one time. Wow. Okay.
Huh. What would you say are the 2 parts, if it was true?
Honestly, I have no idea. It just sounded like something that would be true. Like there would be 2 random parts of the body that can't heal themselves. Maybe like an internal organ or something.
Maybe. Okay.
Like your liver, like, I don't know.
No, your liver is like known for being able to like when you do liver donations or like transplants.
That would actually make a lot of sense. So
You just take a sliver of
I'm
the
gonna
liver.
rescind my liver answer. Your heart, your arteries, because those get clogged and you have to do surgery.
Yeah, but the artery is the tube, not this inside. So whatever is getting clogged is not.
Well, clearly I wasn't a health major. I think that's what we've learned here.
There are 5 different blood groups, sorry.
Well, now, what's the difference between a blood type and a blood group?
I think it's the same, honestly. honestly.
Then why'd you say group
I
instead
don't
of
know.
type?
I'm going by the question.
I'm gonna say Ariel. I'm gonna say true. No.
Wrong.
There's more. There's not.
There's
Are we? There's four, right? It's O A B A B.
Did you say C?
I was thinking like positive and negative, but I guess that would be like the group or the type. I don't know.
Venus is the hottest planet in the solar system.
Fried chicken.
Ariel.
False.
Wrong.
Ooh, it is. Interesting.
Shouldn't it be Mercury? Because isn't it the one closest to the sun?
Venus
know-
has an average surface temperature of around 450 Celsius. Mercury is closer to the sun but has no atmosphere to regulate temperature.
The only reason I remember somewhat of like the order of the planets is from Saved by the Bell. Do you know? So there was one episode where, what's his name?
I feel like you're about to say Schmidt.
I know.
Screech?
Screech. I don't remember the context, but he was like, it's like I can't even say it, but there was like an acronym that he just put together of all of the letters.
That's
It's not
what
Yeah.
slowed me down. I was going through. I'm like, my.
No, it wasn't like a.
It's not the regular one. I know what you're talking about. It's not the
No,
regular
it
one.
was just
but-
like a sound of all the first letters.
Oh yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
But anyway, Venus.
India is the most populated country in the world.
What country?
India.
India. Ariel, false.
Wrong. True.
I thought it was China.
Thought the same thing.
Okay.
Coffee is made from berries.
Ariel, true.
Correct. The Caesar salad was invented in France.
Fried chicken. False.
Correct. Pizza was invented in Rome, Italy.
Ariel, false.
Correct. The Olympics are held every 5 years.
Ariel.
Fried chicken. False.
Correct.
I wasn't sure who got that.
Neither was I.
Eating too many carrots can make your skin turn orange.
Fried chicken.
Ariel.
True.
Okay. Yeah, true. You can swallow and breathe at the same time.
Ariel, false.
Correct. You're shorter at night than you are in the morning.
Ariel, true.
Correct.
I'm sorry. What?
You're shorter at night than you are in the morning
Why?
because your body compresses like with
Oh,
gravity.
okay.
Do you know what I want to do? I want to do those like one of those stretching tables where you like hang upside down for a minute and then like test your height before and after. Far, don't give me that look. It's a thing
Next time.
on our Patreon.
Our blood contains gold.
Gold. Ariel.
Fried chicken. Oh, go ahead. You said Ariel
No,
first.
you go ahead.
No, you said it first.
I said it. You were more confident in the way you said
Yeah, but
your
that's
name.
fine. You said it first, though, so go ahead.
True.
Correct.
What were you gonna say?
I was going to say true. It felt like a trick question kind of thing.
There are 14 bones in a human foot.
14.
Fried chicken. False.
Correct. You can sneeze during your sleep.
I've always wondered that. I'm gonna say Ariel. I'm gonna say false.
Correct. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so tonight, goodness, we are talking about trust.
Okay.
We are continuing on with our series of water. Of what did we label it? We're talking about
I'm
Peter
pretty
walking
sure
on the
we
water.
had this exact conversation
Yeah.
on the last episode.
But I don't know if we came to. We're talking about Peter walking on water. We're still talking about it. We're gonna continue to talk about it. And
Okay.
at least one more episode after this. So today we are talking about trust. How would you say the subject, topic, idea of trust fits into this story?
Peter had to trust Jesus.
Okay. Would you say that Peter had to trust in his own ability to walk on the water? Let me rephrase. Let me rewind.
Mm-hmm.
Why would Peter have had to trust Jesus?
Because walking on water is not something Peter could have done in his own ability.
Was that
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. It seemed like you had more to go with that.
That was
Okay. Yeah, so because this is not something that Peter would have ever done, right? There is no way for him to trust in his own ability to walk on the water. Because from what we know and what I'm sure he knew of water is you can't walk. You're
Mm-hmm.
you know? But yes, he had to trust in Jesus, right? Because would you say Jesus is trustworthy?
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, so to know. Oh, I had a typo, sorry. It threw me off. Yeah, so to know that our faith is not in our ability to walk on the water, but more so in the ability for Jesus, or Jesus in this situation, but like God generally, I'm going to generalize, in God's ability to catch us if or when we do fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. In Matthew 14:31, just the singular verse, it says, "Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. 'You of little faith,' he said, 'why did you doubt?'" Break that down for me. What does this verse mean to you? How would you explain this verse to someone? Either you can add context from the story or just take it on the verse alone.
Well, in the next episode, I'm going to talk about the "you have so little faith" part.
Ah.
So I'm not going to talk about that right now.
Okay.
But why did you doubt me? I mean, we're talking about trust tonight. So you can see Jesus asking Peter, why did you stop trusting me? I mean, doubt would be probably the opposite or as close to the opposite of trust as you can, get. So, well, I guess distrust would be the opposite, but I think doubt would be the beginning of distrust. So, yeah, I think Jesus is asking Peter, why did you lose trust in me even though you already started walking on water?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like that description, analysis
Analysis. Let's go with that.
of the scripture. I don't disagree with it. We are, however, going to be focusing on the immediately part, right?
Okay.
So, like it says, immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. What does immediately mean to you? Like, how would you define the word?
Right away, as close to instantaneous as possible.
Yeah, right? So as soon as Peter started to drop,
Mm-hmm.
immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. So I take that to mean that we serve a God that steps in immediately, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that we always ask him for help immediately?
No.
Right? I think a lot of times we hesitate. Well, I know, like speaking on my own experience, I know a lot of times I have hesitated to ask for help, right? From anyone, not just like from God, but, right? But when we do come to ask for help, does he help immediately? Doesn't mean we need to see it immediately.
I'm gonna go with yes, but I'm gonna reserve the right to change my answer down the road.
Yeah, I think a lot of times God does step in immediately, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I see it immediately, right? Like there, you can be putting things into motion where I don't see the effect of it until like down the road, right? But in order for that to have happened, this had to have happened at this certain time or whatever. Yeah. So immediately, without any intervention, without any intervening time or space, right? Right away, we said. So yeah, so he might not always pull us out of the storm or out of the water immediately, right? But he weathers it with us as well. So why do you think that happens? Why does he weather the storm with us versus pulling us out of it?
I think part of it has to go to just who Jesus is, or rather, not necessarily who Jesus, but what he is trying to teach us in certain situations, right? Again, this was a situation where, for lack of a better term, Peter challenged Jesus in the sense of, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come and walk on water, right? So Jesus says, okay, come, right? As Peter's walking on water, right, he gets distracted, he begins to doubt, he starts to sink. Jesus immediately reaches out and grabs his hand, right? It doesn't even say that he pulled him out, right? Like, to me, whenever I've pictured this conversation, Peter is half in the water, right? It's just like Jesus is holding him, at least his head above, asking him, you have so little faith, why did you doubt me? Because after that is when they climb back into the boat, right? So to me, I think Jesus is kind of teaching Peter a lesson here, right? Not only do I have the power to allow you to defy nature and walk on water, I also have the power to save you from nature itself, right? But why do you still doubt, right? And I think that's something where, especially with Peter, when you look at his story in particular, you see doubt kind of creep into Peter a lot, right? Peter has these great moments of faith, but he also, to me, has these great moments of doubt, right? So, yeah, I think it's more Jesus and God going, hey, look at how powerful I am. Do not forget who exactly is the God that you serve. And I think that's why sometimes, though Jesus can reach out immediately and save us, he doesn't necessarily pull us out of the situation completely.
I think it also, you like briefly mentioned it, but I think it also has to do with like teaching a lesson, right? A lot of the times we are put into situations where we need to get something from the situation, right? So like Peter and his moment of doubt, why are you doubting him? You know that he has done so many great things in your close relationship with him, right? So why would you think that in this random moment that he's going to let you let you drown or let you fail, right? And I think in those times it can sometimes feel as though God hasn't stepped in because he's not pulling us out of the storm. But I also think that it's important to remind ourselves that he is a God that will be with you, right? He will, like we said, he won't necessarily pull you out of the storm, but he will guide you through it, right? And it all comes down to your relationship with him, I think, or the way that you're going about handling the situation or weathering the storm, right? So like sometimes, like have you been in a situation where you were going through a storm and it felt as though God hadn't pulled you out necessarily? Or like have you been in a situation like this?
Yes.
How would you describe how it felt?
It didn't feel good.
Well, yeah. It's a storm.
No, I mean, not necessarily the storm, but the feeling of praying to God and he's seemingly doing nothing, I think sometimes can feel worse than the storm itself.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's for me. That's really the main thing there, right? Because I think sometimes for me it's been less about doubt and more so just expecting God to immediately pull me out of a situation, and learning that God does not operate on my
Yeah.
schedule was a big. I think that was part of the lesson that he had to teach me in that sense. So yeah, there was this time of, okay, hey God, like I know you're there, I know you can do this, but why aren't you? And I think that was just a big thing for me to kind of learn and I guess grow from.
Yeah. I think that's also been like one of my struggles too. Like even recently, right? So like how do I So one of my issues has been like I feel like a broken record, but like I don't like not knowing, right? So if I'm in a situation where I know that certain things need to happen, but like other people need to do it, and I'm not seeing them do it, in my head I'm like, why aren't they doing it? Doesn't mean that they're not doing it, it just means that I don't see it. Right? So like when we were at camp, right? That I was reminded by God that like even though I don't see that things are happening, it doesn't mean that they aren't happening. And that's something that I constantly have to remind myself, because like even though God's not pulling me out of this storm, right? Or I don't feel as though like anything is happening in my situation, there are waves that are being set off that I cannot see. And I think that's just like, I just constantly have to remind myself that, especially in situations where I know that there are certain things that need to be done, but there are also certain roadblocks that need to be moved. Yeah. And like you said, I think it's the feeling of expecting something to happen and not seeing it happen that kind of feels worse than feeling as, because it feels like you're being ignored sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's never a nice feeling, especially when you're going already through a time. Yeah. But I think it's also important to note in this verse, right? In order for Jesus to have immediately reached out to Peter, he would have had to have been relatively close to him.
Yes.
Right? So whatever an arm's length away was, it's not like his arm just I'm picturing, it's not like his arm just magically grew and crossed however far they were. Although I don't doubt that it could have happened. But he had to be close to Peter, right? So I think a lot of times also, in order for us to, I guess, feel that immediate help, we also need to be near to him, right? So in order for Jesus to immediately catch Peter, he had to be close enough to do that. So therefore, we should also focus on how near we are to God.
Yeah, I think another way to look at that, just with what you were saying of Jesus's arm probably didn't just like shoot out and grab him. I think, but then, you followed up with he could have if he wanted to. I think one thing that we often forget, right, is ideally we should always be trying to draw closer to Jesus. At the same time, we should be able to trust him in the sense of, even if he's not close, he is still powerful enough to move in a situation. Even though ideally, I know we always want to be close to Jesus. That's just what kind of makes sense, right? But we should never feel as though, because we are also far from God, that he can't intervene in a situation.
Or that he won't.
Or that he won't. Right?
No, yeah. When I say that, I mean like it's easier to feel how much he's moving when you're closer to him, right? But yeah, so just because you're not like super tight, like whatever, it doesn't mean he's not going to make moves in your life. It's just like like the butterfly effect, right? Smaller.
I'm waiting to see where you go with this one.
Just like smaller motions can end up being really big.
Okay, sure.
Like the ripple effect.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, so basically we have to put our faith and our trust in Jesus, right? We should be focusing on our proximity versus our problems, basically. Right? How close you are to God versus like the situation that you may be in. I think it's also important to note that you can't save yourself a lot of times, most times, right? You can't heal yourself, you can't cure yourself, right? That's not something that you can do. So if you're looking for assistance in situations, it's better to look towards God versus try to figure it out yourself.
I want to change that statement
Okay.
because, all right, you were talking about like you had a cold and stuff, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure. I have a feeling it wasn't so bad that maybe you had to necessarily go to a doctor, but maybe
No.
you just had to get some over-the-counter thing and take something. Here's a genuine question. In the process of going to the pharmacy or maybe
We had.
what?
We had.
Okay, right? So in the process of just going to like your medicine cabinet, at what point did you go, God, intervene in this situation?
In my cold, honestly, I did. Because a couple of days I was like, I could not get out of bed.
But
So it
was that before or after you started taking medication?
Probably after.
Okay. So
But again, I didn't cure myself, right? I didn't. It was the
So-
medicine.
right, but again, okay, the medicine cured you. By that statement, God didn't cure you.
He provided the means for the medication to be made,
Okay. So
and he gave me the knowledge to know that I should take
So-
certain things.
and that's kind of the point I wanted to get to because I think sometimes we are able to act without necessarily calling on God.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
I figured
and
that's
I
where
think
you were gonna take it.
that we also have to be mindful, right? That, and I think this goes back to, I don't know, maybe like a month or two ago. I forgot the exact topic we were talking about, but we were talking about this idea of when you have a close enough relationship with God, and this ties back into being close to God. I don't want to say that you have to not pray about everything, but when you are close enough to God, you have the understanding of who God is to just make decisions because you know this is what God
Yeah.
would do, right?
I think, yeah, like a real life example, like if you were to equate God to like a physical friend, right? Like let's say you're ordering food, right? But your friend's not physically with you, they're not responding quick enough to let you know what they want to order. If I know them well enough, I will know to order for them, right? Versus if I'm not that close to them, I'm like, I would be like getting anxious because I'm like, what do you want to order? Like I need to order it.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% because and I think that's something that I think it's lost on people, right? Where because we know we can call on God in times of need, we don't call on him outside of that. And it, to me, one, it's harder to create trust, right? If Peter was not one of the 12 disciples, to me, there's no way he is going to challenge Jesus and say, if that's you, Lord, tell me to come walk on water. Right? I mean, there's a handful of people that probably had that faith, but like, I don't see him doing that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I feel like because of that relationship he had with Jesus, he would have the grounds or like the foundation to be able to say that.
Yeah. And that's why, like, when it comes to something like being sick, right? There is this sense of, well, God has given us knowledge to, and to some degree, access to medication, right? And it's not to say that we shouldn't still, like, if you know you have a cold and you know you have cold medicine, doesn't mean you don't still pray, but it doesn't mean you need to delay the process and be like, God, is this a cold? Should I take cold medicine? Give me a sign, like let the cold medicine fall into my mouth, or like, like, because,
Fall into-
and the reason I say this, because I remember when I was younger, I remember my dad was, or was it him? Or I just remember there was someone was telling me the story about someone who passed away because they just didn't take medication when they were sick, and all the doctors were like, "No, you should take this. It will at least increase your chances of survival." And they're like, "No, we're just gonna keep praying about it." And it was one of those things, and it was like,
You can do both.
I get having the faith that, no, my God is a healer and he will heal me. But let us not be ignorant of the fact that God has already done certain things and established certain things where we don't need to suffer needlessly, if that's the right way to put it. Like, realistically, like, I mean, it sounded like your cold was maybe worse than a typical cold, but if you have a typical cold, you might be able to kind of just wait it out,
Yeah.
right? Is that the best way to do it? Probably not. So like there are certain things that I think we have to be aware of when it comes to our relationship with God, right? Are we really seeking a relationship with him so that we grow closer to him, and in that we grow in wisdom? Or are we just really using him as
Like a saving grace.
or a genie in a bottle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when you need help, hey, you pray and, okay, God, I need your help.
Yeah. I think we've also talked about this before too, because if that's the basis of your relationship, right? The moment that you perceive everything to be all good, all dandy, like you don't need any help, he's gone, right? There's no need for him in your life then by that like pattern,
Yeah, definitely.
which is also like, how do you really get to know God if you're only calling on him in times of need? Because like if you only call your friend when you need something from them, eventually they're gonna catch on and cut you off. I mean,
Yeah.
right?
No, and that's
I'm not
one-
saying God's gonna cut you off in that way, but like,
Well, and that's
say.
the, I guess, the beauty of who God is that he is not quick to cut us off, right? Whereas I think for most of us in our interpersonal relationships, we are probably going to be quicker to cut someone off than God ever would be. And I think this just goes to the nature of God being that he loves unconditionally, whereas we typically love conditionally to some condition. And I think that's, again, that's the difference now of what it means for us to be human versus God's level of love for us.
yeah, I think yeah. I also wanted to reference Matthew 6:33, right? But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well, right? How would you explain that verse? How would you break
Read
that
the
down?
verse one more
Describe it?
time.
Yep. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well.
So with that verse, I think again, it's the idea of always putting God first. I think it's easy to make God a priority, but it's difficult to make him the number one priority. Right?
Yeah.
It is easy to, because I think for a lot of us, we are so situational that our number one priority changes day to day, right? And in doing so, we tend to keep God like second or third. But with that scripture, we're saying, or God is telling us, keep me first, right? And then everything else will fall into place. Because as you seek me, I'll give you the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding, the grace to deal with all these other things, right? Whether it's family, it's friends, it's school, finances, it's job, it's health, it's whatever, right? he will direct all of those things, but put him first, right? Give him that space in your life to kind of act in every other situation, right? To me, it's this idea of if he's number one, as he pours into your life, it can touch everything else that's below it.
Like a waterfall.
Right. If he's number five, you're kind of limiting him from working in issues 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? You're letting him work on issues 6 to whatever, but you're not giving him you're not allowing him to work in your life in those situations, right? He can, right? But to some degree, you are stopping. I don't want to say stopping. I want to get the right word here. You're refusing God's help in those situations. I think that's the only way I can put it without it being like theologically.
Blasphemous.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's another thing that we also don't realize, right? Though God is all powerful, because he loves us and respects the fact that he gave us free will, if we don't allow him or put ourselves in a position that he can work in a situation, he won't. Right? And I think that's something that we often neglect in our relationship, right? We think that because God is God and he knows everything, he can just snap his fingers and get involved, which he can. But to do that and to just force himself onto us would not be love anymore. And I think that it's a hard thing for some of us to grasp, because when you think about a typical parent-child relationship, because the parent loves the child, they will sometimes forcefully get involved to protect the child, right? But though God is our father, he's also the groom, right? He's also the king, right? He has all these other, there's all these other dynamics to him and how he relates to us, that in his perfect love, he does not force himself on us, right? The same way that Jesus dies on a cross, and though salvation is available to everyone, it is not forced on everyone, right? So I think that's something that we have to kind of really keep in perspective as we're talking about trust, right? To trust God is to put him at that number one spot, and then trust him to work in priorities 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth, right? To put him anywhere else is to say, I don't trust you in this situation.
Yeah, I agree. I think going back to the actual verse itself, I think it can be seen as two things, right? As a comfort, as like a promise, right? You put me first and then I will take care of everything in your life, but also a challenge, right? To ourselves, right? If you can, like, if and when you can build that relationship and put him first and then seek his kingdom and his righteousness, then you will see that the power of God, right? Then you will see that he can do all of these things. But that's up to you to bridge that gap, to put him as that number one priority, right? Because like you said, because he is the God that he says that he is, and he has given us that free will to choose, he's not going to overstep the boundary that you set upon him, right? It doesn't mean he can't, but out of respect for yourself and the decisions that you make for your life, he will stay. He's not going to, like, you know? Peter had faith in Jesus and the fact that he would, I'm assuming that Peter had faith in the fact that Jesus would not let him drown, right?
Hold on, I'm reading the scripture to see.
Okay.
Then he saw a strong wind and waves, and he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. I guess so. Yeah,
Right?
He had trust that Jesus would save him.
Yes. Right? Okay. So at that point in this story, I guess technically his skill set failed him, right? So he was no longer walking on the water. He's going down, right? So to what extent should we trust in our own abilities versus what God can do? I think we also kind of touched on this when we were bringing up the cold, right? So I had the knowledge to take certain medicines, therefore I did it, and then, you know,
I think the best way to put it is we should always trust in the knowledge, the wisdom that God has given us,
okay,
right? And if God has given us that wisdom and knowledge, we should be able to act accordingly because God would not give us something that goes against his word, right? So I think, like, even let's go back to your cold example, right? God has obviously given us the wisdom and knowledge, right? Whether it's through just the relationship we have with our parents, and it may not. This might have just some that's come down the line, right? Hey, you have a cough, you feel this way, go take cold medicine X or whatever it is, right? But I think God has also given us the knowledge, hey, I am not getting better. I need to elevate this now, right? I need to go to the doctor. I need to go to urgent care, the ER, whatever it is, right? And I think that's also important to recognize, right? God has given us wisdom. And if you don't know if you have wisdom from God, then you need to spend more time getting to know God, right? Like, again, there are certain times I'm in situations and it's like, my response to it is I want to snap. I want to be angry at the person because I disagree with what they did. But then I'm like, no, God has taught me better than this. So I'm going to respond differently, right? I also, in this situation, I don't have time to pray and ask God, hey, Arrow's in front of me right now. I don't have time to say, okay, hey, hold on, wait here, go off over there in the corner, pray to God real quick, and then find out how to respond and walk back.
But also, we talked about this in a couple episodes ago. It's the one that's going up today. Because I rewatched it. We talked about it, and it was like, even though you're praying and asking God for something, it doesn't mean he's going to answer you right in that moment.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Like, his answer could be putting you in a situation where you have to experience it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, I think that goes back to, hey, you have to know, God, right? You have to pay attention to him moving, right? And you also have to be able to learn from the lessons that he's teaching, right? Because I think for some of us, we don't learn from the lessons he's teaching sometimes.
That's why we go through them multiple times
right.
sometimes.
Because, and I was gonna say, right, like I've gone through certain things multiple times because I just didn't learn I remember at one point in a certain situation, one of my like closest friends goes like, at what point do you learn not to do this?
Yeah.
Right? That was like the literal conversation we had. And I'm like, and part's like, I really want to say this is it, but I really feel like I'm gonna mess up again. Like, and it was just me being really honest with him. And it was just one of those things. And that's one of the things where it's taken me time to learn certain things, right? And looking back on it, I'm amazed at how patient God can be with us, right? Because I can tell my friends were getting annoyed with me, right? A lot of people were getting annoyed, but it's like, no, God was like, no, I'm going to be patient with you, right? You're going to learn from this, right? And then hopefully you can use this as a teachable moment for others, right? Or a warning for others that may go through similar situations, right? Hey, there is a better way to handle this situation, right? In which you can honor God, right? But again, that comes from me, unfortunately, having to go through certain situations multiple times and then really taking the time to go, okay, God, I get what you're saying. I'm repenting and moving forward and things like that. But yeah, that was one of the things where it just took me time to learn. And one of the things I've also learned from that is that I've noticed because I did certain things so many times, it's almost like muscle memory when I'm in certain situations to almost sin, because that's what I've always responded with. And I noticed one day when I was in a certain situation that was similar to the other one I was talking to with my friend, I realized my first instinct was to do something. I was like, no. But even just as the thought creeped into my head, it was like I caught myself. I was like, no, that's not how we're going to handle this. We're not going to go backwards now with our relationship with God. No, we've learned from this. There's a better way to handle this. Let's do this, right? It may not be the easiest thing. It may not be the best conversation to have with someone, whatever, but, like Joseph all the time, right? I'm going to honor God above everything else. Okay, in this situation, I'm going to honor God, right? Whatever else happens, happens, but at least I know at the end of the day, I did everything I could to honor God.
Yeah. I feel like that's a good place to end. I had another question. When you're editing, you can decide if you want to keep it in or not. So, when Peter is in this situation, right? He's drowning, maybe, close to it, right? Actually, this question doesn't really have to go with, anyway. What makes it possible for us to proceed even when we don't know what the next step is, right? So for Peter, quite literally, there was no next step because he went down. But when you don't know where to go or where to step, how do we proceed? Or what can we use to help us in that?
I'm definitely going to put this after like the end credit thing, like a little bonus question. I would say, again, this goes back to the initial topic of trust, right?
Yep.
Even though he had this momentary lapse of doubt, he was still able to go, oh no, but that's Jesus in front of me. He can save me. So as it says, he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted, right? It wasn't, where are you, Jesus? It wasn't someone come help me. It was no. He directed all of his energy at that point to Jesus, the one person he knew would be able to do something in that situation. And I think when we're in storms or seasons of life and we don't know what the next step is to take, and this goes back to what we were saying before, right? Where when you have the godly wisdom and knowledge, you're able to move because you know what God's word says. When you don't know what God's word says, your next step should be to turn to God, right? And I think that's exactly what Peter did. He didn't know what else to do, right? Jesus already called him out into the water. He's walking on the water, and now that's not working. So he goes right back to God. God, save me.
Yeah, so my pre-written answer was that our faith and trust, right? And the fact that God will catch us if and when we fall, because a lot of times it might happen, right? So it's not that he might hello?
Hi.
So it's not that he hesitates to reach out, but sometimes we hesitate to ask, right? All right. Catch you on the flip.
Goodbye again.